Hey guys, in this chapter we're going to be building a jQuery slider. Alright, it's not just an image slider, it's a content slider. As you can see, we have some text here as well. This isn't part of the image. It's a separate div with a using a background using CSS. Alright, and as you can see, we have an auto switch option, so it just scrolls or fades automatically. And we also have arrows where we can change to go forward and backwards, and we have a nice little fade effect. Alright, so the images we're using are 940 pixels by 350 pixels, and I've included all the images in the project files, and I'm also going to include a Photoshop PSD file that'll look like this. Basically, it's just the 950 by 350 pixel image, and I have all these layers here with the different colors. Alright, so if you want, you can experiment with this, maybe change the sizes or whatever you want to do, change the image. So I'm just going to include that as well. Alright, so let's go ahead and create the project file or files, and I'm going to call this just content slider. Alright, and what I'm going to do is actually bring all these images over. We have the slide images plus the left and right arrows. Alright, so I'm going to bring that whole image folder over. Alright, now we're going to create the rest of our files. So we need our main HTML file. Okay, we want a JavaScript folder, of course, and a CSS folder. Okay, so we'll create the CSS file. I'm going to call it style.css. Alright, and then in the JavaScript, we want to create our script.js file. And obviously we will also need jQuery. And feel free to do what you want. You can go to jquery.com, download the JavaScript file and include it, or you can do what I'm going to do and just use the API, the Google API URL to include it. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up Index in a browser, and also open it in your text editor. And I'm also going to open the CSS file and the JavaScript file. Alright, and we'll start off with basic HTML layout. So doc type, through the whole project I'm going to be using HTML5. Okay, I'm not going to use XHTML. Alright, title, head, title. Let's call this jQuery content slider. Okay, let's go ahead and link our style sheet. And that's in the CSS folder, style.css. Okay, the JavaScript. Now I'm going to include the URL to include jQuery. Okay, so we're getting it from the Google API site. Alright, and then we need our body. Alright, so let's look at the page. Alright, so I want everything to be inside of a container. I believe it's 960 pixels, so let's go ahead and create the container, give it an ID. Alright, and inside of the container, first thing we want is an H1. Actually, let's do a header just to make it semantic. H1, and I'm just going to say jQuery content slider. Alright, so that's all we need in the header. Next we're going to have our previous image. So an image tag src is image, and I believe it's called arrow left, and that's a PNG file. And we'll put an alt in here as well, and we'll say previous. Okay, so might as well do the right arrow as well, and the content is going to go in between them. Alright, let's just make sure those images are being rendered. Alright, and then in the middle we're going to have a div with the ID of slider. Okay, that'll be our main div. That's going to include all of our slides. Alright, so we want to create another div and call it slide div class equals slide, and I'm also going to set a class of active. Okay, so that's basically how we're going to switch our images. We're going to move around this active class. So the first image, obviously, we want to have the class active, and then we'll make it so when we press, if we click the right arrow, the next slider div will have the class active. Alright, so in here, let's close that, and then inside of here we're going to have another class, and I'm going to call this class slide copy because this is going to be the text. Okay, so in the copy we want an h2, and we'll call this slider 1, and then we want a paragraph, and I'm just going to paste in some lorem ipsum. Alright, so we have our slide copy, and then directly after the copy, not inside, make sure you get out of that div, we want our image. So image src, this is in the images folder and called slide1.jpg. Okay. So we want a few of these. Let's see, how many are we doing? 2, 4, we'll do 5. So I'm going to grab from the slide class to its closing div. Okay, and then we'll do 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright, so we want to take active off all of them except the first. Alright, and let's change the title. This will be slide 2. Change this to a 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Alright, so let's take a look at that. Okay, we have our description and our images. They're just all on top of each other. We have the previous button, and then we have the next button. Okay, so that's the HTML. Pretty simple. I was going to do the HTML and CSS in different chapters, but we'll just keep going here and do the CSS. Alright, so let's start out by resetting everything. Okay, so we'll use the asterisk, and I'm going to set a margin 0 and a padding 0. Okay, then we'll move to the body. Okay, for the body, let's set a font family of Arial. Alright, we'll set a font size of 14 pixels, and set the color to white. Alright, and I'm going to set the background to a dark gray and give it a line height of 1.6 EM. Okay. You can see that now there's no margin or padding on anything. Alright, I spelled height wrong. H-E-I-G-H-T. Okay, so after the body, let's do some of the root elements. We'll do links. Okay, so links should be white. And text decoration, none. Okay, H1 tag. We're going to align that to the center. Alright, and set a margin bottom of 20 pixels. Okay. Actually, let's set a... Actually, never mind, we'll do the container. Let's do the container next. Alright, so the container is going to have a width. Let's do a width of 980 pixels and set a margin top and bottom 40, and then left and right will be auto because we want it pushed to the middle. Alright, and then I'm just going to set an overflow. We'll set an overflow of hidden. Okay, so that's our container. Let's make sure that that's working. Alright. Next we want to do our slider ID, or slider div, which contains all of the slides. Alright, and this we want to do quite a bit too. We're going to set the width to 940. Okay, and then the height. We're setting the width and the height to the same pixels as the images. Okay, so if you're using different dimensions, smaller or bigger, just make sure that you set this to the same dimensions as the actual images. And all your images should be the same size. Alright, let's set the position here to relative. Alright, and the overflow you want to set to hidden, because you only want one image shown at a time. And so let's just float that to the left. Okay, we're going to float the arrow icons as well as this slider div. Let's add a padding of 3 pixels and a border of dark gray, solid 2 pixels, and let's set the border radius. We'll set border radius to 5 pixels. Okay, so that's the slider. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, so you can see now we only see the first image, or the first div. And I'm just going to make sure, I just want to set the images too as well. So slider, image, we just want to set that to the correct width and height. Alright, so the buttons, let's do those real quick before we do the actual slides. Okay, so we have an ID of previous, so this style will be for both. Okay, so they both will float left, and they'll both have a margin top of 130 to push them down to the middle of the image, and cursor will be a pointer. Okay, so now we'll do actually, let's set the position as well. Relative. Alright, and then let's also set the Z index. I'm going to set it to 100. And then for previous, what we want to do, let's actually take a look at it. Oh, we didn't add the IDs to the images, to the arrows. ID is previous, and this should be next. Okay, so I want to bring these in. You can see how they have the style where it's going to look like they're over the background image. So we need to move. We just got to give this one a margin right of -45, and this a margin left of -45. Okay, so previous, margin right, negative. Okay, we'll do the same thing for next. And next will be margin left. Okay. Alright, so that looks good. Now we want to do the actual div. You can see we have the content above it, above the image. We want it inside of it. Okay, so let's do the slide first. Slide, and we just want to set that to an absolute position. Alright, and then the copy is going to be positioned to absolute. And I'm going to set, we want it at the bottom, so bottom 0 and left 0. And then give it a padding of 20 pixels. Let's see what that does. Shoot. Oh, it's a class of slide. I'm sorry. This should be a dot. Okay, so it's in the correct place. Now we got to do the background of the copy. So we'll say background. First of all, we'll set the color, which is going to be 7F. What is it? 7F, 7F, 7F. And I also want it. I want it to have an opacity. So I'm going to set background again. And I'm going to set it to RGBA, and we want it to be dark, so 0, okay, 4 zeros, and then, I'm sorry, 3 zeros, and then 0.5 for the opacity. Alright, and that should give it a dark, clear background. Alright, so that looks pretty good. The hiding of the of all the images, we need to hide all images except the active one, which is the first one, but I'm not going to do that with CSS. We're going to do that with jQuery. Alright, so we'll do that as well as the rest of the JavaScript in the next chapter.